The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, Chapter 16. The new type of professional man required. Negroes should study the professionals for all the same reasons that members of another race should go into these lines of endeavor, and also on account of the particular call to serve the lowly of their race. In the case of the law, we should stop to make exceptions because of the possibilities for failure resulting from prejudice against the Negro lawyer and the lack of Negro business enterprises to require his services. Negro must become like English gentlemen who study the law of the land not because they intend to practice the profession, but because every gentleman should know the law and the interpretation of the law by the courts too. All the rights of the Negroes in this country are involved, and a larger number of us must qualify for this important service. We may have too many lawyers of the wrong kind, but we have not our share of the right kind. The Negro lawyer has tended to follow in his footsteps of the average white practitioner and has not developed the power which he could acquire if he knew more about the people whom he should serve and the problems that they have to confront. These things are not law in themselves, but they determine largely whether or not the Negro will practice law and the success he will have in the profession. The failure to give attention to these things has often meant the downfall of many of a Negro lawyer. Yes, like 25,000 black men in America, 2023, with no job. There are, moreover, certain aspects of law to which the white man would hardly address himself, but to which the Negro should direct special attention to. Of unusual importance to the Negro is the necessity for understanding the misrepresentations in criminal records of Negroes and race distinction in the laws of modern nations. These matters require a systematic study of the principles of law and legal procedure. In addition, there are too further study of legal problems as they meet the Negro lawyer in the life which he must live. This offers the Negro Law School an unusual opportunity. Because our lawyers do not give attention to these problems, they often fail in a crisis. They are interested in the race and want to defend its course. The case, however, requires not only the unselfish spirit they sometimes manifest, but much more understanding of the legal principles involved. Nothing illustrates this better than the failure of one of our attorneys to measure up in the case brought up to the United States Supreme Court from Oklahoma to test the validity of the exclusion of Negroes from Pullman cars. The same criticism may be made of the segregation case of the District of Columbia brought before this highest tribunal by another Negro attorney. In both of these cases, the lawyers started wrong and therefore ended wrong. They lacked the knowledge to present their case properly to the court. Our lawyers must learn that the judges are not attorneys themselves, for they have to decide on the merits of what is presented to them. It is not the business of the judge to amend their pleadings or decide their cases according to their good intentions. Certainly, such generosity cannot be expected from prejudiced courts, which are looking for every loophole possible to escape from a frank decision on the rights of Negroes guaranteed by the Constitution. These matters require advanced study and painstaking research, but our lawyers, as a rule, are not interested in this sort of mental exercise. The Negro medical schools have had a much better opportunity than the few Negro law schools which have functioned in the professional preparation of Negroes. On account of the racial contact required of white physicians, who are sometimes unwilling to sustain the relation to Negroes, the Negroes physicians and dentists have a better chance among their people than the Negro lawyers, and the demand for the services of the former assures a larger income than Negro lawyers are accustomed to earn. But in spite of this better opportunity, Negro medical institutions and their graduates have done little more than others to solve their peculiar problems confronting the Negro race. Too many Negroes go into medicine and dentistry merely for selfish purposes, hoping thereby to increase their income and spend it in joyous living. They have the ambition to own fine automobiles, to dress handsomely, and to figure conspicuously in society. The practice of these professions among poor Negroes yields these results. Why not be a physician or dentist? Too many of our physicians are like the one whom the author recently visited in New York City. When I heard you coming up the stairs, said he, I began to feel good, for I was sure that you were another patient from whom I might extract at least $2 for a prescription. Yet one would wonder how that physician could prosper in his profession, for he had no special equipment for the practice of any kind of advanced phases of medicine. About all he could do was look at the patient's tongue, feel his pulse, ask him a few questions, write a prescription, and collect the fee. The apparatus required for the modern treatment of serious maladies he is not and has not seen to have no ambition to possess. The Negroes of today are very much indeed of physicians who in their professional work will live up to what they are taught in school and will build upon their foundation by both experience and further training. In his segregated position in the ghetto, the Negro health problem presents more difficulties than that of whites who are otherwise circumstanced. The longevity of the Negro depends in part upon the supply of the Negro physicians and nurses who will address themselves unselfishly to the solution of this particular problem. Since the Negroes are forced into undesirable situations and are forced to inhabit germ-infested districts, they cannot escape the ultimate extermination. If our physicians do not help them to work out a community health program which will provide for the Negroes somewhat to survive, we will be exterminated. Negro medical schools and their graduates must do more preaching of the necessity for improving conditions which determine health and eradicate disease. A large number of physicians and nurses must be trained, and new opportunities for them to practice must be found. This can be done by turning out better products from these schools and the extension of these hospitals among Negroes who have been so long neglected in this campaign. However, the Negro physicians must supply the leadership, and others must join with him in these efforts. From medical schools, too, we must have Negroes with a program of medical research. Today, the world is inclined to give attention to the health of the Negro, since unsanitary conditions of the race will mean the loss of health among the whites. Philanthropists, however, hardly know how to proceed or which way to go, because they have so long neglected the Negroes that they do not know how to provide wisely for them, and the Negro physicians themselves have failed to give adequate attention to these conditions. Negro medical students have not directed sufficient attention to the antebellum background of the Negro, who, still under that influence, indulges in the superstitious and religious practices which impede the progress of medicine among them. One would be surprised to know the extent to which primitive medicine is practiced among American Negroes today. Often in the rural district, they seldom see a physician. The midwife and the herb doctor there control the situation. Wow. The greatest problem now awaiting its solution is the investigation of the differential resistance of races to diseases. What are the diseases of which Negroes are more susceptible to than whites? What are the diseases of which the whites are more susceptible to than the Negroes? The Negroes escapes yellow fever and influenza, but the white man dies. The white man withstands syphilis and tuberculosis fairly well, but the Negro afflicted with these maladies easily succumbs. These questions offer an inviting field of research for Negro medical students. While we hear much about medicine, law, and the like, their importance must not be unduly emphasized. Certainly, men should not crowd into these spheres to make money, but all professions among Negroes, except those of teaching and preaching, are undermanned. All Negroes in professions constitute less than 2.5% of those over 10 years of age who are gainfully employed. At the same time, the whites find certain of their professions overcrowded, and some of their practitioners could not exist without the patronage of Negroes. Negroes, too, shall undergo systematic training for these professions in which they have shown special aptitude, as in the arts. They must not wait for the Americans to approve their plunging into unknown spheres. The world is not circumcised by the United States, and the Negroes must become a pioneer in making use of a larger portion of the universe. If the people here do not recognize the Negro in these spheres, let him seek a hearing in the liberal circles of Europe. If he has any art, Europeans will appreciate it and assure him success in forbidding fields. In Europe, it should be noted, the Negro artist is not wanted as a mere imitator. Europeans will recognize him in the role of an enlightened artist portraying the life of his people. As an English abolitionist said more than a century ago, the portrait of a Negro has seldom been drawn by the pencil of his oppressor, and the Negro has sat for it in the distorted attitude of slavery. The portrait of the Negro has seldom been drawn but by the pencil of his oppressor, and the Negro has sat for it in the distorted attitude of slavery. A new method of approach, however, is now possible. There has been an awakening in Europe to the realization of the significance of African culture and circles, that they want to see that the life is depicted by the Negro who can view it from within. There is a philosophy in it that the world must now understand. For its contemplation may come a new social program. Herein lies the opportunity of the Negro artist as a world reformer. Will he see it and live in it, or continue the mere imitation of others and die? That is chapter 16, you all. Thanks for viewing, and thanks for taking notes. The Miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Woodson. Peace out.